Good morning, class. Again, after we talked about our PowerPoint about driving safely and driver safety and what not to do with that, and how you can help prevent injury and help save lives, your lives, and other people around you. Well, today we're going to be over three different categories today. And sadly, that these categories they are not fun to talk about, but I think that it's something that you all should know and that you all should be aware about. And we're going to be going over bullying, sexual harassment, and homicide, or fancy word for homicide can be murder. So, has anybody here ever been a victim to bullying before? I have. You all have, huh? I know that every single one of y'all are raising y'all's hands right now. Don't act like you're not. And sadly, because bullying is something that I know that everyone will go through some point in some time. And hopefully the same can't be said for sexual harassment and homicide, but it's still something that you should be knowledgeable about. And it's prevalent enough that you should be prepared and know your details and facts about these things. And so I want you to think back just a quick minute. Think back to a time when your friend was being bullied. What did you do in that moment? What actions did you take? And did you intervene? Did you stop it? Did you stand back and just kind of watch it? But take a second to think about this. Going through that sort of experience, it didn't make you feel very good now, did it? Watching your friend go through something like that, or you going through something like that, doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good, does it? No, not at all. And so, first off, we're going to take a look at bullying and what it is. But now we're going to look at the ways that we can stop and also prevent bullying as well. So, let us get started. Let me share my screen here. Desktop one, share. Move that out the way. Play from the start. All right. We are in business. So, bullying. Let's talk about it, eh? What is bullying? Well, it's not, see, you and your friends get in little arguments all the times. Like every now and then, you and your friend will get a disagreement about something, which sports team you like better, who's better at basketball, LeBron or Michael Jordan. Answer is LeBron. Sorry. It's true. But bullying's not your average, everyday, typical disagreement or argument between friends or classmates like we're talking about. So you're like, all right, what's the difference? Well, something's bullying if one person's hurting or harming one another with either their words or their actions. It's bullying if you're intentionally trying to hurt somebody's feelings or physically hurt someone. That is bullying. And if the person that's being hurt is having a hard time defending themselves from the behavior, that's also bullying. And the kids who are doing it, they have more power. They know they're more powerful. They know they're bigger and stronger than so-and-so. They know that they could get away with it if they wanted to. That's also bullying. Just because you can get away with it doesn't mean it's right. Power, like we were just talking about, who has more power. Well, that can be a lot of things. It can be somebody who's older than you, and say like, an older brother, older sibling, somebody who's more physically bigger or stronger than you. Maybe they just maybe they just grew more. Maybe they're just more muscular. or if somebody's has a higher social status, like they're more popular, so they have a bunch of friends who are like, they got more money and all this stuff. They got more money from their parents to get to do this. They have a bigger truck and all that. Or I know nowadays it's whoever has the bigger truck for boys and males. When a group of students get together and they gang up on someone, that's having more power. It doesn't have to just necessarily say to one person. And a lot of teenagers, they just describe bullying as when someone tries to make someone else feel less about who they are as a person, like they're inferior. And the person being bullied is not able to make it stop. And I think that's a very good explanation for it. When you're trying to make somebody else feel less about who they are as a person, like they're not worth it. And the person who is getting bullied by that person, they don't have any power to make it stop. I think that's a very good definition. And so the stresses of being bullied, they can interfere with how a person goes about their everyday life, how they're doing well in school, or if they're learning, or if they're just like even engaged or focused. And the children and youth who are being bullied, they're more likely than any other children to become depressed, become lonely, become anxious. They have low self-esteem. They don't feel good. And they even think about suicide, because if they have people constantly bullying them and telling them that like they're nothing, that they're a piece of crap, they're this, people are going to start to believe it, because all that negative talk coming to them, all that bullying, and nobody's telling them like, hey, that's not true. Like, you are worth it. Like, it gets to people. And it gets to some people worse than it gets to others. Students who are bullied, they're going to school is scary for them. Can you imagine that? Like, being so scared to go to school, or like they're scared to go use the bathroom because they're scared somebody will follow them in there, and then crazy. Or like riding on a school bus, that happens a lot. People get bullied for that. And in a survey of 3rd through 8th graders in 14 different Massachusetts schools, more than 14% of all of them, they reported that they were afraid of being bullied. And that's a high number, and you may not think it is. And research shows that bullying can be a sign of other serious antisocial or violent behavior. And so people who usually bully their peers are more likely than any others to grow up and get in a lot of fights. They get injured in a fight. They get vandalized. They steal property. They do criminal things. They start drinking more. They smoke more. They're not involved in school. They drop out of school. They even carry a weapon. I've seen stuff like this happen loads and loads of time. And I bet you if you could go to anyone, go to your parents, go to your parents, just talk about like, hey, have you ever seen stuff like this? They'll tell you straight up yes. And anybody who tells you they've never seen stuff like that is not telling you the truth. But bullying also has an impact on other students at school who are bystanders to bullying, to people who are just witnesses to it. It creates climate of fear around everyone and disrespect in schools, and it has a negative impact on student learning. If somebody sees another guy bullying somebody over there, they're like, oh, that's awesome, I can do that and get away with it too. And then it's just a chain reaction of things going on. More and more people are getting bullied. More and more people are not wanting to come to school. They're not like, why more disruptive behavior in schools, and it has a negative effect on everyone. So it's not just affecting the bully and the bullier. It just affects everything. So you might be asking, what are the different types of bullying? Well, there's physical bullying, which is hands down the easiest one to recognize and see. And that right there involves putting your hands on someone with the intent to harm them. It's kind of self-explanatory, but I'm telling you anyway. Pushing someone, shoving them, hitting, kicking, biting, hair pulling, touching them inappropriately, which can go to sexual harassment. We'll talk about that in a second. Breaking objects, taking or damaging somebody else's stuff, or it can be verbal bullying, where this is the most common form of bullying. And sometimes it's not as easy to spot as being physical, obviously. But it's because it's a quick, direct, and easy thing to do, is what it is. It's like teasing, name calling, threatening someone, trying to intimidate someone, demeaning jokes, like making really snooty jokes about someone, spreading rumors about somebody, gossiping about somebody, slandering somebody. And then there's also sexual bullying, and it's something that, not everyone will think of as bullying, but it can include like using words that demean somebody about their gender or their sexuality, like talking about a girl like she's an object instead of a person, inappropriately touching somebody's body parts. Excuse me. Sorry. But inappropriately touching somebody's body, unwelcome physical contact, doing somebody without somebody's consent, or even taking inappropriate photos of somebody or receiving them and then posting them online. And the posting online will go in cyberbullying. We'll talk about that. But there's also emotional bullying. And this type of bullying, it's like more sophisticated and it's calculated. And it's often done by a group, especially this one's big with like girls. I know teenage girls is a big one. And this one really hurts people on the inside and like makes them feel bad about themselves. And if you ever hear the term sticks and stones may break my bones, well, words will never hurt me, that right there is absolutely not true at all. But, and examples of emotional like this is, leaving somebody out of a group activity on purpose, telling lies about somebody in order just to like ruin their reputation, and humiliating somebody publicly. And the last one we'll talk about is cyberbullying, which is the newest form of bullying because technology has become so prevalent. Then once that becomes so prevalent, somebody's going to find a way to bully somebody. But there's also bullying. Examples of cyberbullying, it's like using the internet in order to bully someone emotionally or verbally. But it includes sending mean text messages to somebody, posting videos, stories, or photos that ridicule someone, and spreading rumors through social networking sites. This one has become one of the most prevalent things out here, and it's almost probably become more prevalent than physical, maybe. But we're going to talk about some quick facts about bullying. But each school day, 160,000 students stay home for the fear of being bullied. 160,000. They're just scared to go to school. So what does that mean? You don't go to school. You don't get that. You might think it's good not to go to, you might think it's so fun not to go to school, but like they don't get the opportunity to learn. They don't have the opportunity to get their education, get the right test scores in order to get the good degree they need, good colleges, all because they're being bullied. And they lose that opportunity. Every student has the right to feel safe in their school, feel safe to learn. But like we said, they have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, more fear and anxiety, depression, bad grades, suicidal thoughts. We talked about that. But it's not just the people who are being bullied, like the targets who pay the price. The students who bully others, they tend to grow up and end up having more legal problems than others who don't. By the age of 25, 1 in 4 of normal bullies will have spent time in jail. And that is very sad. But so it's not just them who get affected in the long run. But those who witness bullying often express that their feelings about seeing it they're either angry that it's happening, they're guilty that they can't do anything about it, or that somebody's getting bullied who doesn't deserve it, or their fear that like they might get bullied next because of it. And they wish they could help, but like they don't know how. And there appears to be a strong relationship between bullying as a youth and experienced legal and criminal troubles as adult, as we just talked about. One study showed that 60% of those characterized as a bully in 6 to 9 had one or more criminal convictions by the age of 24, like we just talked about. And the National Threat Assessment Center found that the attackers in more than 2/3 of 37 mass school shootings felt the shooters who did that, more than 2/3 of 37 felt like they were persecuted, bullied, threatened, attached, or injured by others. So it can bring violence among people who you don't think would ever happen. When does bullying happen? Well, bullying can happen as early as preschool. I see numerous times first graders who bully each other and leave each other out and just get mad at each other. But it peaks in middle school and it decreases in high school. And y'all are in high school right now, which means it's probably decreasing, but that still doesn't mean it's not prevalent in there. Who gets bullied? Well, everyone. It can happen to anyone at some point in their life. Bullying is about somebody's behavior. And so, like, it could be directed at the shy, quiet kid, or it could be directed at the class tough guy, you know, or it could be directed at the guy who may not have as much money as so-and-so and might have old clothes and hand-me-down clothes, doesn't have a nice vehicle. It could be anybody. Girls bully, boys bully, preschool kids bully, high school kids bully, adults bully. There's not a aspect that indicates somebody who's going to get bullied. It happens of all ages, no matter what's going on. And so, but the one thing that we can tell for sure is that nobody deserves to be bullying, and that bullying is not okay. And everyone has the right to feel safe wherever they go. It's like, what can we do against bullying if it's just so prevalent in everyday life? Well, there's a lot one can do if they are being bullied. If somebody is being bullied, first of all, if like you're being bullied, like know that you're worth more than what you're getting. You are worth more than that, than what you're getting. You are loved. You have a savior who died on the cross for you. That's another conversation we can get into another day. But you tell someone, you tell your parents, you can tell your teacher, your faculty member, you can tell a trusted adult, you can tell so many people. You develop a plan about how you can respond to the situation. You're like, okay, this is happening. How do I attack it? How do I keep away from this? And with the help of an adult, you decide how other students may be able to help. Other students can help. Your peers can help. Your friends, they can all help you. Well, what about a bully? What can they do to help stop being bullied? Are they just going to end up being a bully their whole lives? Well, no. I've seen a lot of times where a bully who was a bully at a young age, they grew up to be very good people. Like, they understood that their actions was hurting others. They're like, oh, like what I'm doing is hurting them more than I know, more than what I can see. Just so I think that just because I want to get a quick laugh or makes me feel good for a second. But they realize it's never okay to hurt or harm someone. Like, it is never okay to do that intentionally for no reason. And you realize that everybody deserves respect. Everybody's different. Just because somebody is different than you doesn't mean that they're less of a person for it. Just because somebody doesn't like the same thing you like doesn't make them a bad person. We can all have different opinions. And what can a bully can also, they can talk to someone, their parents, a teacher, a trusted adult, ask for their help. If you go and ask them for help, like, hey, like I'm acting like this and I don't want to be like this, they will help you. I promise you that. If you're a witness to bullying, what can you do? You can speak up. You can say like, hey, that's not right. Don't do that. when someone's willing to say that they think something is wrong, they can make a difference. But if somebody's getting bullied by a bully and nobody's saying anything, everybody's just watching, they're just going to think that everybody enjoys watching. But if people's like, stop it, like that's not right, they're going to start thinking about it, and it's going to have an effect. It might not have an effect in that specific moment, but it will. And so you let others know that you don't accept bullying at your school. You don't accept bullying in the friend group. And then others will be more willing to speak up too with you. Others will be willing to join you in that. Tell a grown up. That doesn't mean you're being a tattletale. If a bully gets mad at you for telling, that's on the bullying. That's not being a tattletale. You are helping a friend. Reach out to other people. Tell the kid who's being bullied that they are worth more than what they're receiving, like we talked about. Ask your friends, like, hey, help me, like my buddy over here is getting bullied. We need to help stick up for him together, because the more there are, helps. Be the person who's nice to someone. Go sit to the person who's sitting at the table by themselves. Go sit with them. Let them know that they have people who see them for who they are, and that they are not alone in this world. So we'll talk real quick about these true or false questions, but let's have a little game here. I want you to say, is this true or false? Bullying is mostly a male behavior. Once a bully, always a bully. Bullies come from families representing all socioeconomic levels, from poor to rich. Bullies are just as likely as the rest of us to be successful. You can spot bullies because they're large and aggressive. Fighting back against a bully won't solve the problem. Bullies are insecure and have low self-esteem. You can change a bully's behavior by focusing on what happens at home. Targets of bullies are usually people with physical differences, overweight, glasses, etc. And everyone should report bullying because it almost always makes the situation better. So I am going to put a minute right here on my cell phone, and I will give you a minute to answer these. Just answer them really quick. I just want to see what you think these answers are. If you right or wrong, it's okay. I promise. Just really quick. Go ahead. About 30 seconds. All right, so let's talk about this. Bullying is mostly a male behavior. False. Males and females vary in how they bully, but bullying it's like how they bully, but it's mostly like the same frequency. Once a bully, always a bully. That is also false. Like I told y'all the other day, like earlier, I've had friends who were bullies before, but like now they're some of my closest friends, and they realize their actions were wrong. Bullies come from all socioeconomic levels. True. Anyone has the ability to bully. How much money you have doesn't determine how you choose to use the power you have. Bullies are just likely as the rest of us to be successful in life. This is actually false because, like we talked about, they're more likely to have criminal charges and have trouble with the law in the future. Remember, we talked about this. You can spot bullies because they are large and aggressive. That's false, actually. Some bullies are large and aggressive, and you can't spot them anyways. But some bullies they're very subtle in their forms of intimidation and social isolation. Like sometimes it's very hard to spot. And they can bully over the internet, like cyberbullying, like we talked about. Fighting back against a bully will not solve the problem. I think this was kind of bland, but like fighting back, I mean, like physically will not solve the problem. It's true-ish. Like it can even be dangerous to fight back, but physical altercation is not the way to go. Bullies are insecure and have low self-esteem. This is actually false because many bullies actually do have good self-esteem and think they're doing what others want them to do. And they may be popular and they think highly of themselves. So it's not always true that a bully is just very depressed and is just taking his anger out on people. You can change a bully's behavior by focusing on what happens at home. This is false. We change their behavior by how we as bystanders respond to him or her. And the targets of bullies are usually people with physical differences. That's actually false. Like they don't look any different than each of us does, but their differences are targeted. So like if they're a loner or if they just don't like have many friends, they're like an isolated person. But everyone should report bullying because it always makes the situation better. That is true. It's a myth that reporting bullying will just make it worse. It always results in the improvement of the bully, the target, and the bystanders. So, sexual harassment. What is sexual harassment? Well, sexual harassment is the unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical forms of conduct of sexual nature when submission to or rejection of this conduct creates an intimidating, hostile, and offensive environment. What are the types of sexual harassment? Well, there's quid pro quo, and this harassment occurs when, This type of harassment occurs when a school employee causes a student to believe that he or she must submit to unwelcome sexual contact in order to participate in a school program or activity. Like, hey, you have to do this for me, or you're not going to be able to get into the club you want, or something like that. And it can also occur when an employee causes a student to believe that he'll make an educational decision based on whether or not the student's going to submit unwelcome sexual conduct. So like threatening to fail a student unless the student agrees to date them, stuff like that. That's quid pro quo. There's also hostile environment harassment, where this is unwelcome sexually harassing conduct is like so severe, persistent, that it affects a student's ability to participate or benefit from an educational program, or creates an intimidating, threatening environment. And this can be by another employee, or it can be by another student. It can be by a teacher or a student. So what's a verbal example of sexual harassment? Well, it's based on if you're verbally making a sexual joke or teasing, calling somebody honey, sweetie, or babe when it doesn't call for that. You're wolf whistling like, or other noises like that. You're making a rumor about somebody's sex life. You're making a comment about somebody's body, or you're making derogatory comments based on somebody's gender and who they are. Or some visual examples. You're making obscene posters and cartoons or of somebody doing some kind of sexual act, or maybe just like them being in the nude. Or you're making computer graphics and putting obscene message on bulletin boards and stuff. Or you're making offensive models, statues, or figurines, or you're wearing inappropriate, or somebody's wearing inappropriate clothing or piercings. And what are the physical forms of sexual harassment? Well, there's inappropriately touching another person when It's not called for that. And grabbing, groping, fondling somebody, rubbing up against another person, massaging or stroking another person, or stalking someone. It's another form of sexual harassment. It can also result from if you're just staring at somebody too long. Your physical gestures have sexual connotation. So you're making physical things about something. I'm not going to do any. But you're making like looks or expressions that have sexual implications, or you're blocking the pathway of somebody to make a sexual advance. Or there's also, let's ask, what do you know about sexual harassment? Is it most prevalent in elementary, middle, or high school? Where in the school building does sexual harassment occur mostly? What percentage of girls will experience some form of sexual harassment during their K-12 education? And a one-time comment, joke, or verbal innuendo does not constitute sexual harassment, or does it? And the number of sexual harassment by males increasing or not? I didn't mean anything by it. Is that a valid defense to excuse offensive behavior or not? I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds for that one. All right. So, some answers to these questions. Is sexual harassment more prevalent in elementary, middle, or high school? Middle school, actually. I know I wasn't expecting that when I first saw it either. But where in the school building does it occur mostly? It mostly occurs in the hallways, in between classes, when people are going in between classes. And what experience of some girls will experience some form of sexual harassment? 78%. That's very high. And does a one-time joke or verbal innuendo comment constitute sexual harassment? It doesn't. It doesn't, but it's considered least offensive if it's verbal, but it can become the basis for sexual harassment if the comments are consistent. And so the number of sexual harassment by males is increasing. True. Nowadays, over 50% of males will somehow sexually harass a female. And I didn't mean anything by a valid expense to excuse offensive behavior. False. Not at all. It's the impact you make, not if you meant to make that impact or not. Who are the victims usually with this? Well, anybody can be a victim of sexual harassment, male or female, but the most common tend to fit in the groups of unattractive or unstylish girls, physically mature girls, or boys or girls who don't fit the stereotypic mold for their gender. And how does this show up in our schools that we're in? Well, peer-to-peer sexual contact among students, like in the hallways that we talked about. Sexual harassment between school staff members, including administrators. It's sad, but it's true. Inappropriate touching of students by teachers and staff, or inappropriate behavior of coaches in athletic programs. What does this do to a person? Well, it creates doubt about them. They're curious. They're confused. Why is this happening to me? They're more worried about that than what they're learning. They're a victim. Physical, psychological, cognitive, behavioral. The aftermath, they'll have repercussions of, they can have depression, they can get ulcers, all these things that you see right here. They can have problems with their future relationships. It can affect them for development, migraines. People a lot of times start doing self-abuse, suicide, attempted suicide. What should I do if I witness this? Well, you need to speak up, speak up, speak up. Report all incidents, report them. Provide the names of who's involved, who was a witness there. Document what was said and what was done. That's going to help you with the sexual harassment. Very quickly, let's go into homicide. What is homicide? Well, it's the unlawful killing of a human being, the causing of death of another person. What are the types of homicide? There's justifiable homicide, there's excusable homicide, there's murder, and there's manslaughter. Well, we'll talk about this very quickly. Malice aforethought is an intent to kill with an ill will or hatred. It's divided into 4 different mental states. You have intent to kill knowingly, you have depraved heart murder, and you have felony murder. So individuals who have deliberate intent to kill, they possess what's called express malice. Implied malice is when somebody has the intent to cause great harm, or they have intent to commit a crime that may not lead to death, but it might. You just like kind of pick and choose. Let's talk about the murders. There's first degree murder, which is the most serious form of murder. And the prosecutor has the burden of establishing premeditation and deliberate. So like you thought about it and you did it. Second degree murder, it's like murders not involving premeditation and deliberations, kind of like in the moment, heat of the moment. There's voluntary manslaughter. It's like you committed that act without malice in the heat of passion upon adequate provocation. There's, excuse me, my nose is stuffed up. There's involuntary manslaughter, where it's you committed that act without malice as a result or conduct that was inefficiently reckless or negligent. So drunk driving would be something like involuntary manslaughter. Does this apply to, so if I murder somebody, a woman, and she's pregnant, is that like double murder? Or if I hurt the mom and the baby dies, am I a murderer? So by common law, defendants aren't liable for the murder of a child in a mom's womb unless the child was born alive within the capacity for like an independent. So if they were out, or the majority of states, they favor imposing liability when the prosecution can establish beyond a reasonable doubt that the fetus was visible. So like the mom's showing, or if it's capable of living separate and apart from the mom. So that's what it goes to when talking about, that's a question I get a lot about homicide. So what are the types of murders? Well, you have first degree murder. You have capital and aggravated first degree murder. You have second degree murder. You have depraved heart murder. You have felony murder, and you have a corporate murder. And now we will talk about these. And each one can go down the line. First degree murder. What is it? Well, first degree murder is the most serious form of homicide, and it can result in the death penalty in up to 29 states. Isn't that great? 29 states have the death penalty for something like first degree murder. I don't know if Louisiana currently holds the death penalty or not, but they might. I mean, 29 states, that's more than half. But first degree murder requires deliberation, premeditation, and malice. So like if somebody first degree murder, somebody planned to do this, they planned to kill, they planned to take another person's life, they planned the whole thing out. So like before it happened, like days before, they knew that they were going to do this. They knew they were going to kill somebody. So what's capital and aggravated first degree murder? This is also punishable by death penalty or getting life in prison. First degree murder also it can reform the death penalty, but more than likely life in prison. And it's not like you can only get life in prison if you do one. No, you do a homicide once, you get life in prison. Capital aggravated designations, they typically reserved for premeditated killings committed with the presence of various aggravating factors or special circumstances. So like an aggravating circumstance would include like victim, offender, the criminal act, and the felony murder. A second degree murder. So second degree murder statutes typically punish intentional killings committed with malice aforethought that aren't premeditated, justified, or excused. So like you intended to kill somebody, but like you didn't like plan it out. It was kind of like the heat of the moment. Like two people are hanging out one day and then they get in a really heated argument and they start getting in a fight, and one just gets so angry in the heat of the moment that he decides to kill someone. Depraved heart murder. Well, this occurs when an individual kills another as a result of deliberate perpetration, knowingly dangerous act with reckless and wanton unconcern and indifference as to whether anyone is harmed or not. So this a lot of times is like the person in Las Vegas who just shot into a crowd, not caring who he hit, something like that. Conduct, intent, danger. Felony murder. This rule provides that any homicide that occurs during the commission of a felony or attempt to commit a felony is a murder. So it doesn't matter whether the killing is committed with premeditation, intentionality, all that stuff. This is with deterrence, protection of life, punishment, and prosecution. So complications arrive when a non-felony kills a felon with a bystander. So a complication would be like a police officer kills a felon who was robbing a bank or something like that. There's corporate murder. A corporate can be held liable for a murder in a case where their worker was, say they approved for their worker to climb the top of the Empire State Building in order to fix something, but they didn't provide a harness or something to help them, and that person ended up falling and dying. That could be corporate murder, and it could be, and the current punishment for corporate murder is a fine, which could be bigger. There's manslaughter, it's the unlawful killing of another human being without malice or thought. It's the distinction between voluntary and involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary is killing another human in a heat of passion, like anger, fear, jealousy, panic. A lot of times self-defense. Involuntary, we talked about this. It's like you didn't mean to do it, and it just happened. You were being reckless. Like drunk driving is probably the biggest involuntary manslaughter we'll see. Negligent, it'd be like a mom forgets her baby in a car, sadly, something like that. This a lot of times is involuntary manslaughter. Misdemeanor, intentional killing during the commission of an unlawful act. And then I'm going to ask you, what type of murder is this? Quickly. So I want you we're going to read these, and then I want you to think, what type of murder is this? So playing Russian roulette and it ended up killing someone. What would that be? A school shooting. What would that be? Guy went to rob a bank, holds a gun on one of the tellers. The other teller has a heart attack and dies. Defending yourself against attackers, and you end up accidentally killing one of the guys defending yourself. Driving under the influence, crashing another vehicle, killing someone. Or a company sends a worker on a job on top of a building without, I just gave you the answer to the last two. I'm just talking about it. But think about it for real quick. Let's talk about it. So playing Russian roulette and it ended up killing someone. That was second degree. You didn't mean to do it. You didn't go into that thinking that you were going to kill someone, but you just did. Guy went to rob a bank on the older teller. Older teller had a heart attack. That's a felony murder. School shooting, first degree murder. Defending yourself against a knife attack. That's voluntary manslaughter. Driving under influence, involuntary. Company sends a worker on top of the corporate. We already went on both of those. But so that's what we're. Thank y'all for listening today. I know that those subjects, they can be touchy for some of us, but that doesn't mean that we should just sit back and not be informed about that. Nobody should have to deal with or go through the pain of being bullied, sexually harassed, or a victim of homicide. But the fact is that the world is a cruel place and people every day have to deal with these things. And it may seem like something that we don't have any control over, but the impact that you can have on somebody just by stepping up and sticking up for somebody is huge. you can change their lives for the better for years to come. And so now that you know these facts about these three subjects, I hope that you'll take these steps towards making this world a better place or making it a brighter place in somebody's life. And so I want you all to have the great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow so we can continue our lessons. And we're going to talk about natural disasters and how to stay safe from them. Thank y'all. I'll see y'all later. Bye.